Hey, welcome everybody to Talking Niagara. This morning, your podcast for news and current affairs that impacts Niagara Falls today. Okay, so welcome everybody. And okay, so there are a few warning signs out there for the US travel industry as summer nears. Apparently, bookings are down.
Well, I like to give a warning. There's a bug going around. I got it. I had a couple of rough nights, and yesterday, if you notice, I was pretty sniffly during the show. Coughed a few times. Well, that got a whole lot worse by about noon, and I had a pretty rough afternoon and a terrible night. Coughing and sweating and everything. You know, it was like the complete gamut. Digestive, respiratory, achy. Yeah. So there's something out there. So I don't know. Put on a mask. It isn't COVID though. I tested for COVID though.
Yeah.
It reacts just like when I had COVID, but it's not COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep your.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. So continuing on with the warning signs for the U.S. Travel industry as summer draws near, and there's a number of kind of reports out there from Expedia, Bank of America, U.S. Travel Association, and even Hilton Hotel. They're saying basically everything is down right now. Reduced travel demand in the US has led to weaker than expected revenue in the first quarter, says Expedia, who they're basically they run several websites that are out there for booking, for booking hotel rooms. Right. They also run VRBO.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to get much better this year, but it might get better if they do a few trade deals.
Yeah.
Like for instance, they had the fastest of all trade deals with China there. You remember Xi Jinping was supposed to phone Trump, and if he didn't phone Trump, there wasn't going to be any, but in 2 days they had a trade deal. So if they could do that with some of these other countries, kind of secure people and thinking, things are okay again. But I think overall, though, the distaste for going to the United States right now, and I do believe it's more about Trump than anything else. Although,
I think that
sadly, it's the American tourist that's going to suffer.
I think that also rubs off on us because we are America adjacent, and it's kind of I think I'll put off my trip to Canada because I don't want to be even near the US.
Well, no, I don't think other people coming into Canada would make that. Although I imagine a lot of people that come into Canada would also step into the U.S. a little bit. That's very possible.
Exactly. A lot of people, who come to here, they come to Niagara Falls, they walk across the border, or they take a day trip across the border, etc., etc. And I think if people are deciding not to go to the US, then they'll probably include Canada, that trip to Toronto, Niagara Falls, etc. Now we'll do that another day when the US is a safer place to go.
Yes, but it is a safe place to go.
Oh, I'm not.
It is a safe place to go.
Yeah, I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying what people might well be thinking.
Well, what bothers me is there's travel advisories for people who are educators, like university professors and stuff like that. They find their phones being searched and things like that, and other people have found their phones being searched, and you hear things like, "What do you think of our president, Donald Trump?" If you say you don't like him, you might find yourself headed back over the border. I don't know. I'll be putting that to a test on Friday night because I'm going to go see a lacrosse game. But
yeah, but you've been across the border several times since Trump's been in power.
Yeah, I got no problem with that.
Yeah,
I have no problem.
And I don't think anywhere, you'll have really any trouble with it, right? You're Canadian. You've been there dozens of times before. They won't even trouble you. Do you have an Nexus card?
Yeah. So I got no problem with that at all. Like,
Yeah.
they don't bug me at all. No.
Yeah. If you got a Nexus card, they won't bug you at all.
No, well, they won't bug the guy I go over with either, right? Because they just look on their little computer and see how often we go back and forth.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, for anybody that's getting older and wants that trip to the U.S. and doesn't find that, I would say take it this year, despite the travel warnings. It's not going to be dangerous to you or anything like that. The distaste for American travel is almost entirely a distaste for Trump and his policies.
Yeah.
But and that kind of thing. So, plus also, I think a big factor is the U.S. dollar is still very strong, and the other currencies are not. A Canadian currency obviously is not very strong up against the U.S. currency.
It doesn't help us travel to the U.S. when we're paying double for, we're having to fork out nearly double for things.
Yeah, that's insane, eh?
Yeah.
So anyway, I would, if anyone wants to travel to the U.S., just do it. Just do it. Like, don't postpone it. If you have a couple of different options, if you're like in your 30s or 40s or 50s, you got a couple of different options. Yeah. But if you're getting later on in life and you wanted that one trip to the U.S., I mean, take it. I mean, you might not get another opportunity. But if you're younger than that and you could use a different option, you could go to Mexico instead of Florida. Probably get a better deal down there anyway, or the islands or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And certainly the islands have got plenty of options out there. Yeah.
And lived in the Dominican Republic for years and years.
Well, I know some people who have lived in the islands as well for quite some time. They spent much of their working life in the islands.
Yeah, there you go.
Weird. But anyway, and then they came back to Canada to retire. Weird. Okay, so
sorry.
Basically, what these reports are basically saying, it's the first slowdown since the end of the COVID pandemic, and basically the end of the COVID pandemic fueled what this article was termed revenge travel.
Yeah. Well, like I said, as far as we're concerned here, yeah, if you don't have to go to the States, don't go to the States. If you feel it's good to protest. But if you got friends or relatives down there, or if you've got a trip planned, just do it. Right. Yeah. If you were just thinking about going to the U.S., then maybe take an option, but that kind of thing.
Well,
I think it's people's dislike towards Teslas and traveling into the United States. These were all political decisions. Like Tesla's cars, I think they only sold 500 in the UK or something like that in 1 month or some certain period of time, which was disastrous. But that's a political thing. Tesla's still a really good car. As a matter of fact, I almost had a friend of mine was going to stay with me here, except I got sick. He was going to come today. So 2 Americans in a Tesla were going to come and visit me. But they're going to their cousins instead because I'm sick. So anyway.
Well, the thing is that travel industry is a fickle thing anyway, isn't it? Always has been. The thing about travel, for example, if you're two of us worked in the same industry, but we're on different companies in the same industrial park, and you lose your job, and we're competing companies, I might not, our company might well be doing fine, but because you lose your job, I'm kind of going, whoa, I'm not going on holiday this year. You know what I mean? That's the thing about the travel industry. It's very fickle.
Well, most of the time it's predictable, and if taking Trump and out of the equation here, they would have had their normal increases in tourism as they expect they would have. But the Trump factor is slowing everything down.
Yeah.
If there's a few more trade deals, like pretend deals, like there was with the UK, that's kind of like a pretend deal, and China, that's kind of a pretend deal, where they just went right back to where they started from. And the UK one they've been working on that for 20 years. In fact, all they did was put the finishing touches, or nearly the finishing touches, on a plan that was started 5 years ago. So these deals are, much touted, but they weren't deals at all. They didn't happen overnight. They happened over a period of time. And so they're going to have a few more fake deals out there that make things look good. And, well, we got a deal. We just got to fix all the particulars. Well, those particulars are the things that take 18 months to 2 years to do.
Yeah.
So basically what they're going to do when they get they're going to have to get a few more fake deals out there, because I don't know, they're going to be happy now because China won this first round of negotiations and had, anyway, we'll talk about that a little later. It's coming up.
Yeah, we're talking about that.
Yeah, anyway, we could jump off of this travel thing because we pretty well flogged it to death anyways.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Hang on a minute. We got some comments here. Okay, so good morning, Mike, of course. And people, Mike is saying it's called a boycott. I'm not so sure, but yeah.
I think there's an element of boycott to it. Yeah.
I think there is an element, yeah. But Canadians usually go to Blue Jay games in Seattle. Right now, they boycotted. Right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Good morning. We made it to Tuesday, says Nancy. We got rain in Cleveland. Yeah, I'm interested to know what your thoughts are, Nancy, in relation to what we were just talking about, the bad tourism coming to America.
Not bad tourism.
Or no tourism coming to America.
Well, it's just less. It's just less. It's not. No, it's like 3.3% drop and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Is it something that Americans have been expecting?
Mm-hmm. Look, okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, it's a reflection of Trump. It's not a reflection of.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Americans, because soon as in a year or so, that'll all be gone and people will be coming back into the States. Well, I don't know. It might take his whole 4 years, but it'll go back to normal sooner or later.
It'll go back to normal eventually, yes. Okay, so Alberta government has frozen the industrial carbon price at $95 a ton for an indefinite period starting now.
Now, does anything surprise you about this?
Not really.
No, as a matter of fact, I expected it.
Yeah. Apparently, the carbon. There's been a carbon price on these products out of Alberta since 2007. Alberta had an industrial carbon tax scheme since 2007 that collects funds paid by the industry and returns them in forms of grants for emission reduction technology or industry innovation projects.
So basically what they do is they tax the industries that doing the emission and then give them a grant to apply to emissions technology and other emissions things. So here I'm gonna tax you for this, but here's the money back, but you have to apply it to emissions reductions.
Yeah. Now, and essentially, so this is older than this has been going on for quite some time. It's older than the Trudeau Liberal government.
Yeah,
it's been part and parcel of Alberta for quite some time.
I think it goes back to 2007, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. 2007, yes. Yeah.
All right. So this doesn't surprise me one bit. When you've got our neighbor to the south there, and they are, and they're not complying at all with the Paris Accord, how are you going to stay competitive? If the oil that they're coming out of their ground there and they don't have the carbon tax put on it, how then do you stay competitive? If they're not being charged the carbon tax, then why are you charging your own people carbon tax?
Yeah.
So you have to stay competitive in this particular time, and this was all predictable when the green thing, environmental issues were very top of mind to everyone, and the world looked upon the oil sands and said, "Oh, that's one dirty mess out there," and lots of pressure was put on our politicians about that. But that's where our money comes from. 11% of our GDP comes from that oil, and it probably go up going forward. So you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by restricting the amount of oil you could put out of the ground, especially when there's a market. And right now, not almost nobody is thinking of the environmental factor when our country is being strained so much by the tariffs down south.
Yeah,
So,
right at the moment, the environmental factor, as you're saying, is playing second fiddle. And those tariffs are on that. Those tariffs. We've kind of gone into the mode of, well, no, we've got to get our products out there, and fight any way we can to keep our products alive. And that's true. That's as true as for Albertans as it is for us Ontarians.
Well, Environment Minister Rebecca Schultz said going over $100 a ton would make the province wildly uncompetitive.
Yeah.
And it is not a common sense approach at a time like this where the threats from outside our borders are so great and the world is looking for Canada energy right now. Yeah, so there would be lots and lots of market for our LNG. There'd be lots of markets for our oil if we can get them to market. So why do we want to shoot ourselves in the foot by
increasing the carbon tax on it? We don't.
Now, if everybody else did it equally, if it was fair, well, I think we would just do it because they'd have no option but to buy oil that had this carbon tax price on top of it. But if the rest of the world's not doing it, what's the point?
Yeah.
It's to get our oil out. Sadly, this has kind of turned the environmental thing backwards because you've got a guy, more than one leader. You got the Russian leader, you got Saudi. Who cares about the emissions? We don't care about the emissions. We got oil and gas.
Actually, the irony here is that Saudi Arabia cares more about emissions than does Russia.
Well, it does on paper, and we see what happened in OPEC, how the Saudi Arabia started to ramp up production and bring this oil price down because the other OPEC nations aren't playing by the rules. Kazakhstan, Iraq, and others out there are not playing by the rules. They are overproducing and getting more out to the market. And they could care less about the emissions thing, So why do we put ourselves in the corner? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why limit our product out into the world when nobody else is playing by those rules? Eventually, we're going to have to turn to a greener economy, but you got to get everybody to play by the same rules. If you don't, what's the point? Here's Canadian oil, and it's worth $100 a barrel, and $40 is the environmental thing, right? And somebody else says, well, our oil is $60 a barrel because we didn't bother about the environmental thing. Yeah, that's an extreme example, but you get what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that actually is not helping, Alberta oil at all, is it?
No, not at all. So that basically is something I expected. I expected a reversal on environmental programs. We find that even the Liberals have found out that they have to go with a reversal. They axed the carbon tax. Carbon tax was, celebrated by the Liberals. Even Carney said it was good at one time. But even they have to say that it's not good. It's impeding the economy.
Well, we've got a different economy than we had back in 2015.
How's that?
Well, I think that we've got an economy that's not stable right now. We've got an economy that's I describe it as more in a mess. Right. Some industries are doing well, and other industries are doing exceedingly badly.
I think we're almost in the same place we were in 2015 because remember, a year later, Donald Trump got in and he started making noise about NAFTA, and we had to go through all that kerfuffle back then until 2018, until they signed a deal. Until the USMCA came into play, right? So I think we're in a very similar situation than we were in 2015. We had an economy that was, struggling, but things were better then. I think the tax burden that the Liberals put on us and the environmental regulations impeded a lot of development, a lot of regulations. We could have had LNG. Remember, the Germans came knocking after the war began with Ukraine.
Yeah.
And Nord 2 pipeline got blown up. The Germans come knocking, hey, can we have some of your LNG? Trudeau says, well, we don't have any. We don't have much. And it turns out they had all kinds of plans to build ports and everything else like that for LNG, but the Liberals stymied it, ostensibly because they didn't want any. They wanted to meet Paris Accord targets, and you can't do that if you develop your LNG. So I think we're a much more practical place now. What we have to do is try to invent a better way of doing the environmental thing.
I don't know about you, but I always think you can actually develop things like LNG without, and take into consideration the environmental aspects as well.
Well,
it's about managing.
Obviously, they didn't want to do it. We could have been selling a lot of LNG now, if not for the roadblocks that the Liberals put up. Obviously, right from the very beginning, they had a sanctimonious look at Alberta. You make dirty oil. You are an environmental bad guy. So they had this sort of holier than thou look on Alberta, which of course Alberta didn't appreciate. But at the same time, it made them very reluctant to develop energy because they had to look good to the environment, the world environment. Well, that doesn't matter now. People want jobs. And like we said, we're going to have to reinvent our environmental approach. The carbon tax didn't work. Putting our thumb down on Alberta oil and gas does not work. All that does is reduce the amount of money that comes into the country, which is just plain dumb. So
it reduces.
If we can find a way of greening our economy in a better way, that's the way we have to go.
And remember what one of the things that was under Liberals is Alberta needs to change green. Alberta needs to put all these green projects in place. Whereas in fact, actually, why would Alberta's producing oil? Green projects could come from Quebec or could come from BC.
Well, it was the time frame that was the problem. So the Liberals had a very ambitious, and the NDP had a very ambitious time frame to reduce emissions. It was not. It wasn't possible. And as Smith pointed out, the only way you're going to meet those is reduce production. What good is that? If you reduce production, that's less money that comes into the problem.
And that negatively impacts Alberta, is the reason she's opposed to it.
Well, she's got very good points there, and she's been saying this for some time. And Carney, I think, is going to be wise. But my point is that our greening of the economy by putting a gun to Alberta's head and that's going to green the economy. That didn't work, wasn't going to work, and what it did is reduce the amount of oil we could have sold overseas for money, and the GDP would have been happy. We probably could have sold. It could Alberta and the West could probably account for another 2 or 3% of GDP if we didn't put restrictions on it. So it's a very important part of the Canadian economy at this point. And it seems funny to me that we're trying to reduce the effectiveness of those industries and reduce the amount of GDP we have. It just seems dumb.
That's too negative. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to have to come up with a different scheme. We still have to move towards greening the economy, but
as I say, the focus was at one point, hey, Alberta, you're the big bad dirty industry. You need to change all to green, but green doesn't necessarily come purely from Alberta. Inventions come across the board. They might come from New Brunswick. They might come from BC. They're as likely to come from all of those places as they are from Alberta.
Well, Alberta and Saskatchewan were the most egregious because of what they have to do to refine that oil.
Yeah.
So that is sort of going to be the natural place to do that.
Yeah.
But to shoot oneself in the foot and reduce the amount of GDP we get is just plain dumb, and we just got to do it smarter. That's all.
Yeah.
And I think Carney knows that. And I will say, though, that Carney's got rid of Freeland. I'll point that out just as an aside. Freeland is out of the cabinet right now. So it looks like he really is looking for a new group of eyes and ears in his cabinet going forward,
Well, he's got plenty to choose from. They've got what's it, 20 new MPs?
Yeah, he's got tons. And I bet you any money he's not going to make it half women, half men. No. Remember, the Liberals wanted to do the affirmative action thing, and they had 20% of their members were women in the caucus, but they made them 50% represented in cabinet. I don't think that's going to work anymore because those Liberals that did get elected won't put up with that anymore.
I think what you'll end up with is the best person for the job.
Well, that's what we get. We hope that is. But on the other hand, Carney putting someone from Alberta in his cabinet might be a wise thing, even if that person is not the best person for the job. It is symbolic. A symbolic mean if you have someone from Alberta in your cabinet, that's very symbolic.
Yeah.
And a spokesperson for the Liberal government. Remember, they have 1 or 2 seats in Alberta, so
yeah, 3, I think.
They really have to do some peacemaking there.
Yeah, and as you say, probably putting an Alberta in the cabinet would be a good idea.
Oh, a very good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other question, also is I expect to see Bruce Panjoy in the cabinet somewhere.
Oh.
Maybe being given a minor business role. Anyway, well, okay, so we got a couple of comments in relation to this, both by Mike. The Paris Accord was the dumbest thing that we ever agreed upon. When they turned environmental issues into financial sharing issues, they destroyed the reason for it. Yeah. You have to accept that oil and gas will drain every drop of profits before they move forward and work with that. The greening stuff.
Well, yeah. Why would you want to develop green technology when the easiest, fastest way to make money is pulling oil out of the ground and selling it?
Yeah, that's what I say. The green in developments will come not from Alberta but from elsewhere.
I think eventually we're just going to have to get wise to the fact that all the oil producers in the world are going to have to get wise to the fact that we have to green the economy. But if you've got something like Saudi Arabia, and that's pretty much all they have is oil, or Nigeria, or others, what do you do? Now you take a place like Norway that's got a lot of oil offshore. It takes that oil and invests the money, the returns on it, on all manner of other things. So when their oil does run out, they're going to have quite a bit of a nest egg. They're going to have huge amount of money saved up for the national trust. Basically, it's the same thing that Trump wants to do. He wants to build a hedge fund for the U.S., but places like Saudi Arabia, something like that might do that. But in the meantime, look, if you take a place like Guyana, little Guyana, off the coast of that little English-speaking country in right in the Caribbean there, right, and in South America, they found oil there. They found oil and natural gas there, right? You think a little country like that suddenly got money for the first time in its history, is going to say, hey, you know what? We're going to do the green thing now. We're going to reduce the amount of production. Somebody says,
going to do it,
there's your share of the market is X, and you're going to say, well, we don't want to have our share of the market X. We want to have our share of the market X minus 10 because we're environmentally conscious. No, you don't. You're not. You want to want your full fair share of your potential market. And I think
but you see,
Canada has to do. The United States is already doing it. You don't find Russia or the Saudis or the Kazakhstanis or the Nigerians doing anything else. So if we have to change the economy to a more green economy, and that will take technology where we remove the where we can replace fuel-driven with battery and renewable. This is a long-term thing, but we can do it. Well, already we see a lot more electric cars. Remember the electric cars would be such a flop? Well, I see them all over the place now.
Yeah, you do. You do see them everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. If you were to go on a 100-kilometer trip, you could be going, oh, that's an electric vehicle. Oh, that's an electric vehicle. And the way you'll notice them is because they have the GV, the green number plates.
Yeah. So anyway, anyway, so I think it'll come because look, we've put a lot of money into electric cars here in Ontario and other places as well. I think GM is turning a lot of its efforts towards electric cars, even though the amount of electric cars being sold is not as much as they thought they would, but that was for economic reasons more than anything else. We're also looking at, we might reduce our tariffs on Chinese electric cars, which would make, I don't know if that's such a good idea, but the Chinese make a very good electric car. When I was at the auto show, there was a bunch of them there, and they're quite a bit ahead of us. So I would say that the greening of the world will happen, but you have to push it along that way to reduce our dependency on carbon fuels. But believe me, any country that's producing carbon fuels is going to produce as many as they can and sell as much as they can.
Yeah.
They wouldn't, Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. All right. So the man is on trial for the murder of this woman who was found in a shallow grave in Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Yeah, this is a murder. This is the kind of thing that I was afraid of that was going to happen.
And it was near a homeless encampment. So
it was in a homeless encampment.
Yeah.
Right. Well, near the homeless encampment, what's happened is she was part of this homeless encampment. Apparently, she's got in a big argument with this guy. What it appears, or what it is alleged, that this guy beat her to death, and looks like there are signs of strangulation. So they're both homeless. She's a wee little girl, basically she's a wee woman, and this guy bludgeoned her to death and dug a little shallow grave. And just days after she was, well, we can remember there was I believe we saw an announcement in the paper about her disappearance. I think it was only a day or two after they found her.
She disappeared near Stanley and McLeod area in October of 23, and her remains were discovered in the near Thundering Waters Boulevard and Marineland Parkway.
That's right, near homeless encampment there. So she was Niagara Lake. Anyway,
the murderer was from Niagara on the Lake.
Yeah. Now, I don't know. This is what I fear is going to happen. I have this feeling that we're going to start thinking of these people as wastrels and offscourings of society, that we will have less and less tolerance for people like this. And when incidences like this happen, it will exacerbate it. I do believe that there's going to be a tipping point where we do grab these people and put them into encampments and force them to become force them into treatment, because people are going to look at this and say their civil rights are not doing them any good. So we'll remove their civil rights and put them in special treatment areas. When you start getting murder like this, and fires like we've had, where people, angry homeless persons, lighting on fire another homeless person's tent, and this just brutal murder. This is a brutal murder where this person's being beat. Now, of course, the guy is innocent until proven guilty, and Les pointed out in the environment that she was in, anyone could have killed her. But it looks fairly apparent that this guy did. He's 48 years old. And a wanderer, I think they found him up in Timmins or something, or
Sudbury.
Yeah.
He was eventually arrested. So this happened in August, I believe. October. October, and he was arrested I suppose 3 weeks later.
And what are the situations here? Her nickname was Trouble. So obviously her nickname's Trouble. She maybe caused a lot of trouble. Who knows? Maybe she just got this guy at the wrong time and he snapped. Who knows? But this kind of a brutal murder, this is not sit well with people. And these homeless encampments, there's going to be less and less toleration for them, I fear. And their civil rights will be abrogated, if that's the right word for it.
Yeah.
For the meantime, because nobody lives like that if their mind's right. That's what the public is going to think. Nobody lives that way if their head's on straight. Very few people are like that if their head's on straight. So,
do we know if the guy was homeless as well?
We assume that. Like, he might have bailed up to Sudbury to be with family and see if he could be with family. We don't know how the hell he got up to Sudbury. Did he hitchhike? Did he have enough money for a bus?
Yeah,
He was obviously living in.
Obviously, he did what most people would probably do, is get out of town.
Oh man!
You've done something like that, you get out of Dodge damn quick, right?
Yeah. Even if you're acquainted with the person, I'd get out of Dodge. If I was, let's say, a known associate of that person and she got beaten to death, I'd get out of there, because even if I had nothing to do with it, I would get out of there just because I would be afraid that someone would blame me for it.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much of a history this guy has had, and I don't know. It's.
I'm looking at the info on the wanted poster for him. They knew he pretty well went to Sudbury straight away.
Brown of no fixed address pleaded not guilty in Superior Court.
Yeah.
Well, they'll have. It was his shovel apparently, and it's got blood and stuff on the shovel. It was it, but you know, if I murdered somebody, I'd take the shovel and throw it in somebody else's tent. You know, they may have a hard time pinning it on this guy, and I hope he gets proper legal help just in case he isn't the guy that did it. But there seems to be one person says they took off when the fight happened, and later on heard help, kind of something like that. But how can you trust anybody's memory there? They're all like so often, so many of them are stoned or out of it or some way. You're going to be able to trust anybody's accounting of what happened.
Yeah. And what witnesses do you have? Because, you know, as you say, half of them are out of it.
Yeah.
You know, and the rest are in not a good state. Yeah. It's tough. But, you know, it's the way we talked about this way back then, but, you know, it's like the way this all worked, you know, how slow this has been. And, you know, well, it's good to see. It's good to see that finally he's come to trial.
Well, I don't know. I just hope that if they convict him, he was the guy. And my warning here is any more of this, and we will have less and less patience with our homeless people.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. Every time you hear a story like this, our patience level goes down.
Yeah, way down.
Yeah.
And pretty soon we're going to say, well, I mean, it's the right thing to do to remove their rights and put them in a detox environment or a some sort of mental health readjustment place of some kind or whatever. Anyway, that's the problem we were going to have, and society's going to become less and less disposed to helping people out like this because they're kind of just a real burden to society and a burden to each other and a burden to the healthcare system and a burden to the police and just a burden. And
Yeah.
what how often are we going to be able to pay?
And
How long are we going to be able to maintain our level of tolerance as this goes on? And now you got murder in the camps. Okay, that may be the thing that turns it.
yeah, it might well be. Yeah. There you go. Personal message for you, Dave.
Thanks. I had some friends that were going to come and stay with me starting today, but they have to go to their cousins now instead because I'm sick. Shit. Oh, sorry about that bad word there, but I don't know. It's a deadly. Well, man, I had a rough night last
Well, you
night.
sound better today than you did yesterday.
You know what? I felt better yesterday though. I was just stuffy yesterday.
Yeah.
I was. I had a rough night before last. It was very feverish, but when I woke up, I was good for the first until noon. I did my route, my bingo route. I went and got a toner for my printer.
Yeah.
Then I started feeling worse and worse and worse, and then I decided, well, I had a one COVID test left. I used it. I didn't have COVID, but then I had to phone my mom and said, "Look, Mom, I can't come today because I got this kind of thing, and I don't want to spread it there." And it just got worse. And then I had to tell my friends, "Look, I'm sick. It's up to you, but and they decided to go to their cousins instead, which is a good thing because after last night, I wouldn't have wanted to give them this for sure. And I don't know, sadly, man. I mean, I get friends come and I don't see them very often, and I get sick when they want to stay a couple of days. Can you believe it? Can you believe it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe it's fine. You'll be fine.
Oh yeah, but I missed the opportunity,
Yeah. I know.
And I hope I'm
Yeah.
okay Friday night. I'm going to go to a little cross game on Friday night. I better be chipper then.
Oh, you'll be fine by then. Everything will be fine by then. Okay. So
Thank you, Dr. Peter. Thank you very much.
yeah, no, you're not the kind of person. I don't believe you're the kind of person that doesn't recover in a few days. I think you will.
I hope I can. I hope I can rely on your prognosis because if it doesn't turn out that way, I'm suing. I'm suing.
You can't sue me because I ain't a doctor.
Yes, but you gave me a prognosis, and it's right here, right on in the public view. So Peter Giblett has given me solid evidence.
I'm just giving you. I'm just giving you kind of a psychological boost.
Oh,
no, I'm going to reverse that because hearing that you're going to be dead in 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, my ribs, man, my ribs. I've coughed so much. It's
Just don't die while we're alive, Dave.
I feel like George Foreman's punching bag.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't really have boxing anymore today, do we?
Yeah, it's still out there, but it's a lot of it's been usurped by the
MMA.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And but there's still some very fine boxers out there. I've always really enjoyed the lightweight boxers more than the heavyweights, like sort of middleweight down to featherweight. If you really want to see some fine boxing, you watch the smaller guys. They are lightning fast, and they are powerful all at the same time. Yeah. If you want to see some great boxing, watch the lightweights. Almost always, like you can't even see the shots they were throwing. That's how fast they are.
Yeah.
So if you want some real good boxing, if you want to watch some really good boxing, look at the lightweights. Like the heavyweights are pretty impressive because they're big and powerful men, but you want boxing, you want to see boxing at lightning speed, watch the lightweights.
Okay, so Ford's got a target of 1.5 million homes by 2031. Yet we're seemingly failing to get there. We talked about this yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah, we started to, and it's pretty much. I saw this article that you posted. I thought, didn't we already talk about that? But anyway,
we did start to talk about it yesterday, and I think this is going to be something we're going to see on the horizon over the next 3 or 4 weeks anyway. They're talking about a new bill in order to speed up construction, lower costs for developers, create new roads and new transit capabilities. Now, I'm kind of mixed emotion on this because, every time we build, it's good for jobs and things like that. But the thing is, as you said yesterday, as you said all along with this, it's like there's only so many, people in the building trades anyway that you can rely upon to do the work.
Well, here's basically all this is just another legislation aimed at solving Ontario's housing crisis. Basically, what they've already done is they've tried to reduce regulations, reduce all kinds of things that impose all kinds of bureaucracies that impose limitations on how fast and how ready you can get a house up. So they're looking at the regulations and those things that in cities that reduce the ability of someone that like height regulations and parking regulations and all those other things. They want to get rid of them. The problem here is they want to make it easier and easier for developers to put up a building, but the bylaws that were put in place by the cities that these regulations plan to skirt are those things that the city has over years come up with to help develop their city and help form it in a certain way.
Yeah.
And we found even now in the developments that are happening a lot in Lundy's Lane and stuff. So instead of getting 1.4 or 1.2 parking spaces per unit, you're getting 0.6 parking spaces per unit or 0.7 or less and less. So basically what they're saying is, well, we're making a development here for people who don't need a car or can get away without having a car. In a place like Niagara Falls, that's a big ask. You can get somebody that can probably run the life on the buses that they have here, but you're really, really limiting your abilities. So my point here was that each different city and municipalities have come up with these rules, and these new rules by the Ontario government is meant to skirt them, get around them, reduce them, and yet you're asking the city to reduce the character that it wants to build for its own city, the safeguards it has on how many people can be in one place. We find that traffic situations in Niagara Falls are getting worse all the time, and there's another building going to be put up on a street that has questionable traffic flow. It takes something like Lundy's Lane, so they're going to put up another. They're going to take another hotel and turn it into a residential community there with lots of residential units. Well, that's going to cause a lot of, even though there's only 0.6 units.
There may well only be the same number of units as there were hotel rooms, but the hotel rooms are temporary and people tend to leave at odder times of the day. Whereas with when it comes to residences, they tend to be more fixed in their departure times.
Well, they're not. They're going to. It's more concentrated than that. So there's going to be more concentrated people. So that's like the Ontario government is trying to reduce the amount of regulations and bureaucratic things they have to deal with. That will help speed things up. But the number one issue is you only have so many builders. You only have so many construction teams. When you come along and say you want 1.5 million houses in 10 years right now, well, the guys, the roofers and the drywallers and all the other guys are saying, woo, we're going to have a lot of work for a long time. But the problem is you only have so many of those guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because a roofer knows that he can build the roof on this project, and once he's laid the last nail into the roof, he can just depart, pick up his tools, depart, and get another job starting tomorrow.
Yeah. And believe me, he'll have job after job after job. He'll be putting in 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
That and the drywallers too. They'll be having more work than they know what to do with. But we find that a lot of these projects are slow to get off the ground.
Yeah.
And the reason is it's just not enough builders. You cannot change that. You
not enough building crews. Yeah.
The small amount of things you can do to end run bureaucracy, and we got to be careful there because that end running bureaucracy has very little to do with how slow these things are going up. It's mostly getting shovels in the ground because we've found that out in St. Catharines and Niagara Falls. Once the approval rate is there, the shovels aren't going into the ground. How come?
Yeah.
Right.
And we've got plenty of projects here in the Falls where shovels have gone into the ground and stopped, and others whereby I've driven past these places. I'm about to drive past it again today. There's a place where it says new condo development. The sign's been up there on Portage Road for a long time now.
Yeah, and right down, like, it just comes down to that. Like, you can, at first, I think the Ford government was right. There was a lot of NIMBY. There was a lot of things that held back housing developments, particularly housing developments, affordable ones, where people are thinking NIMBY, not in my backyard, over the next town, not our town, kind of thing. So yeah, his government was able to get rid of a lot of that stuff. But in the meantime, now the incentives are all there, the federal government incentive, the provincial incentives. And the fact is, it was just too little too late. And we have a lot of catching up to do. And you're not going to be able to bring in builders like that, immigrants, and take over like that. It's just not going to happen. You cannot train men that fast, or women too, but you're going to find very few women, putting pipes together.
And the worst of this is data published by Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMAH. It showed that housing starts in Ontario were down in March 46% year over year for communities of 10,000 or more people. So yeah, we've reached the plateau of where we can do. Where in fact we were trying to start too many projects.
My problem with this, of course, is they're looking for more and more regulations that they could skirt or reduce or minimize to speed up development. But I think in the end, what you're going to do is you're going to compromise your city. In the end, you're going to put up a lot of buildings that you would have wished thereafter that they had more parking spots in them, that some of the stuff that was and where are they? I don't know. Where are they going to put these affordable places?
And these guidelines are there for a reason, Dave. These guidelines have been put in place for a good reason, and a lot of that is about ensuring that the point about having 1.6 parking spaces per unit, or
2.4.
Yeah, okay. Was actually there for a reason. Paring it down to 0.6 basically means, you would be right. People in Toronto don't use the cars as much. Absolutely.
Toronto, but this is Niagara Falls.
Yeah, this is not Toronto. If you're going anywhere to work, you've got to have a car. So.
Yeah, so what they use Toronto ideology. Okay, you got a transit system? Okay, you don't need cars if you're close to a transit system.
Yeah,
not a place like Niagara Falls. Can you imagine a young man or woman going into there, getting an affordable place, let's say on Lundy's Lane, and they get the affordable place, and then they get a job, and they find that they can't hold on to what they do need is now a car. Now they can have enough money to buy a car so they could go to work or go to different jobs, and find that they can't have one because there's not enough parking spaces.
Yep.
See? And I don't think we're thinking this thing through well enough.
We're not.
And all the changes they're making to reduce the conditions by which a development can go up will turn around and bite us if we're not careful.
Yeah, and the whole point is that a lot of these rules were put in place for a damn good reason, and that reason being that somebody knew something about the history of of Niagara Falls and Niagara region, etc., etc. Should we be developing more transit options? Absolutely, but that is not. That is something for the future, not necessarily something that we're doing in building these homes.
Well, we're building them in anticipation for better transit going forward, and we find that that's very difficult to do and extremely expensive.
Yeah.
When I talked to Bob Gell at one time, he mentioned how expensive the transit system was, and how the intercity transit system, how expensive it was, how huge of an amount of money it takes out of the budget. And we're going to have another budget out of the region, and they're going to try to keep it down to 3.5. Can they do that while still trying to expand the transit system.
Yeah.
Right now, we do not have the kind of transit systems we have in the big cities because obviously we don't have the concentrated people. You could live in Toronto, New York, you don't need a car at all. London, Paris, you never need a car in those places. You can get everywhere you want almost all time.
Like on transit, yeah.
New York.
The only reason people have a car, the only reason people often have a car is because they can go out of the week. They leave the car at home Monday to Friday. They go out in the car to go maybe do the shopping on a Friday night or go shopping on a Saturday.
If you live in the town itself, in the city itself, you probably wouldn't even have a car. And if you're going to go on a holiday or something, you would rent one.
Yeah.
If you wanted a car, there's no point in having it because you can get anywhere, anytime in New York City or London or Paris, but you can't do that here. Even Toronto, the transit system is pretty good. You can pretty well rely on, you don't have to have a transit system if you're living in Toronto. But here, a car. But here, we don't have anything like that. And to sort of plan as if we do, that could be troublesome.
Oh yeah, we need to. Yeah. Transit will come in the future, but you can't assume that it's here now.
Yeah.
All right, and I think we can call it quits at that.
Yeah. I gotta.
And you got to take care of yourself today.
Yeah. I gotta go somewhere and start coughing again. Anyway,
wrap yourself up warm.
Be careful. There's going to be a quarantine around my building here. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, no, I've already called the men in white coat to make sure that happens.
Yeah. Anyway,
right, so I think
without further ado, I bid you adieu. Don't forget Gaza. That's getting worse every minute of every day, and I don't think the West is going to be forgiven for that if they don't do something about it quick.
Yeah.
There are too many innocents dying there.
Right.